A single breath can make the difference between life and death. In your business, when you're selling for yourself, a single breath can make the difference between success and failure. See, the difference between a reflexive decision that leads to failure versus a reflective decision that brings you fortune is just one breath away. I'll show you how. I'm going to take you back a few years to when I was in my corporate sales role. I was sitting there making some cold calls, and I finally reached that guy. I tried him 4 times. Finally, I reached him on the phone, and I managed to book a meeting with him. And 2 weeks later, there I was, waiting in reception, doing my usual breathing exercises, just listening to my breathing. And he scurries along, hurriedly shakes hand with me, doesn't look me in the eye, and I thought to myself, something's up here. He ushers me along into the meeting room, and as soon as he sits down, I hate you salespeople. You make my life miserable, especially your company. You're the worst. You're so selfish. In that moment, a volcano of anger erupted inside me, and in my mind's eye, I saw myself spit out the words, "How dare you say that to me?" And I saw myself get up and walk away and storm out. In my mind's eye, in a breath, I saw that thought disappear over the horizon of my mind. And just like when storm clouds roll back and leave a clear sky, I sat there, calm, just watching him. His rant lasted about 15 seconds. Instead of judging him, I was able to sit there and just watch him. And I was able to offer compassion. When he stopped talking, when he paused for a second, I said, "It sounds like you've had a really bad day. Are you all right?" His response, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I lashed out like that. I've had the worst week. My client's been breathing down my neck. I'm so sorry." A year later, within the next year, our meeting continued, by the way. Our meeting continued in an easy, friendly, productive manner. And within the next year, he booked £70,000 with our business. But can you imagine for a second what might have happened if I had spat out those venomous words and stormed out? Can you imagine? There's no way, it's unlikely he would have invested that $70,000 with us, right? But it's likely I would have stormed out and carried that anger with me and infected everyone on the way back to the office. It's likely those thoughts would have ruminated in my head all afternoon, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I would have been completely unproductive. And it's likely I would have carried that anger home to my wife, been awful company to her and my cat. You know when the storm clouds of anger descend, they stick around for a while, right? Yeah? Not nice, huh? But what happened was, in that moment where I took that breath and I saw the thought disappear, that's where mindfulness practice pays off. See, I was able to offer that breath, detach from that thought, and instead of judgment and defensiveness, I left space for kindness and for compassion. Instead of getting defensive and angry, I was able to offer understanding. I'll explain why this happens. It all begins with a thought, because how you think affects how you feel, what you say, and the results you get. Do you all agree? Yeah? So we have this part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is located in the limbic system, which is the fear center of the brain. I'll call it fear, just for short, right? Now, fear center, its role is survival. And its function is fight, flight, or freeze, right? So it just keeps us alive. So hundreds and thousands of years ago, when we were Homo sapiens strolling across the East African savannas, it kept us alive. It looked out for saber-toothed tigers, snakes, any life-threatening creatures, right? So we're here today because of that. And then we have this other part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. It's associated with wise functions like creativity, insight, inspiration, self-control. I'll call it wise for short, right? So we have these two parts. We've got the fear, and then we've got the wise part, right? Now, who doesn't like selling? Hands up, right? whatever you like. Okay, so sales can conjure up a lot of negative thoughts, right? It can conjure up a lot of negative thoughts because when you're selling yourself, you're always being compared and there's competition. Thoughts of competition pop up again and again and again. And these can throw up all these negative thoughts, which sets fear off. And it sets fear in overdrive, right? An overactive fear center literally clogs up your wise cognitive processes. It literally clogs it up. Because when you're in survival mode, you don't need creative thinking. When you're in survival mode, you just need to defend yourself. You don't have access to creativity, self-control, and insight, right? See, fear, the fear center, hijacks your creativity, it hijacks your confidence, and it hijacks your competence. And the solution is one breath away. Let's do a quick exercise, right? Uncross your legs, right? Close your eyes. And take deep breaths and listen to your breathing, okay? Take deep breaths, just listen to your breath. If a thought pops in, say thank you and bring your attention back to your breathing. Deep breaths. If a thought pops in, just bring your attention back to your breath. Okay, you can open your eyes now, all right? You're probably thinking, okay, I can breathe, whoopee-doo, so what? See, when you're focusing on your breathing, you're not thinking. You can't do the two at the same time. But when you're thinking, when a thought gate crashes your mind and you watch it and bring your attention back to your breathing, that process activates the wise function of the brain, right? When you can watch the thought detach from it, it's a gateway to the present moment, free of thought, free of stress, free of fear. So next time you make that call, you attend that meeting, or you're about to send that email that you know you're all what I'm talking about, that email, right? Take a breath. Take a breath. It quiets the fear. It awakens the wise part, giving you space for insight, inspiration, and your magic to flow. It's just a breath away. Now, I'm not suggesting you become a doormat for people's problems, okay? But when you're running your own business, as a self-employed person, you always face mountains of success and valleys of despair. Now, when the going is good, when you've landed that 7-figure speaking gig, it's easy to be high and inspired, right? But when you're climbing out of the valleys of despair, or you're sailing through the storms of stress, it can be difficult to come up with creative ideas. See, mindfulness doesn't stop stuff happening to you, but it gives you the space, instead of reacting, to be proactive. So you're just one breath away from quietening the stress of your mind and leaving a space for more constructive choices. And you're one breath away from either discounting your fees or asking for more. And you're one breath away from filling with your website or your talk, or making one more call, pitching yourself one more time despite the failure you had. Because the difference between a reflexive decision that leads to failure and a reflective decision that brings you your fortune is just one breath away. Thank you.